Good afternoon, everyone. Praise be Jesus Christ. Amen. Excuse me. Parish office one day receives a call from a woman who asks if a priest can come out to visit with her father, who was in hospice care at home. So, of course, the priest went out to visit with the man. When he arrived, the daughter greeted him, took him into the room where the father was laying in the hospital bed, and she left the room to leave them alone. And the first thing the priest noticed after the man laying in the bed was an empty chair sitting right at the head of the bed. So just to make conversation, the priest said, "Oh, is that chair for me?" And the man kind of smiled and said, "Actually, Father, it's not. That's God's chair. But you can sit in it while you're here." So the priest, not quite understanding, sat down, and they began to talk a little bit when the man explained to him about the chair. He said, "A number of years ago, I was lost in my prayer. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know the way to pray, what to pray. I was just lost. And a friend of mine told me this sort of little simple trick. He said, praying to God is nothing more than talking to God. So he suggested to him, go into a room where there's two chairs, one for you and one for God. And when you're praying, talk to the chair. Pretend, or imagine would be a better word, that God is sitting in that chair, and just have a conversation with him." And the priest was overcome by that simple spiritual exercise, if you will, spiritual direction. And the man said, "Now, Father, I'm telling you this, but I've never even said this to my daughter. I'm afraid she'll think I'm crazy and she'll put me away." So they had a nice conversation throughout the period of time that the priest was there with him. Father anointed him so that he'd be ready when his time came and when he was called, and he left. A few days later, he gets a call from the daughter. She says to Father, "My dad passed this morning." She said, "I was with him in the morning, we had breakfast, then I went out to run a few errands, and I came back. And what I saw just blew me away." She said, "Instead of my dad being laid up in the bed the way he had been for weeks, I found him with his head on the chair." Father didn't know what to say other than, what a peaceful way to be alone with God and to pass into God's eternal kingdom than by laying your head in the lap of God. Is that not a powerful story? A powerful reminder to us of how good it can be when we find ourselves alone with God in a one-on-one situation with him. We heard stories of people being in one-on-one situations with God in our first reading today from Genesis, when we hear Abram being spoken to by God. And God was telling Abram all the things he was calling him to be and all the things he was calling him to do. The first thing we heard in that reading was God said, "Your descendants, Abram, are going to be as numerous as all the stars in the sky." Now we have to remember and keep in mind, Abram and his wife Sarah had no children at that time, but God was promising them that they would have many. It turns out what he was talking about was all of his descendants were going to be his children. We are all descendants of Abram, who later was named Abraham. But he also made a promise to him that he was going to give him all the lands of the nations to be his. And Abram took all of this on faith, not understanding completely, but just because of his trust and belief in God and his faith in God, he took it all on faith, the life that God wanted him to live. In our gospel reading, we heard that beautiful story, the Transfiguration, where Jesus was on the mount with James, John, and the other apostle, and he changed, completely changed before their eyes. His clothes, but not only his clothes, but his face changed as well. And I believe that's one way that their eyes were open to whom they were really with. And we heard that encounter then when they were saying, let's build a tent for you, Moses and Elijah. And that cloud appeared and sent all those other people away. And all that remained when the cloud passed was Jesus. And the voice of his Father saying, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." I believe that was their eye-opening experience when they realized who he was, what he came to do, what he came to be, and what their mission in life would also now become. Being alone with God is one powerful experience. And if you haven't experienced it, I'm going to give you an exercise. My gift to you during Lent will be this spiritual exercise that I learned from a spiritual director I had when I was doing my week-long silent retreats out in Wernersville. She was a wonderful woman, an excellent spiritual director. Quite frankly, she should be a priest. She knows everything that any priest I've ever known knows, and she has a pastoral way of expressing it and teaching it to people. So this is what she taught me, and what I'm giving to you is a gift because it was a gift that I received. And as we know, we're not supposed to hold gifts to ourselves. We are supposed to share them. She always asked me, I had her for 3 straight years, what I was there for that year. What was it that I was looking for during this week of silence, this week of retreat? And this particular year, I just said to her, I'm actually looking to listen to God, to hear his voice, to hear what he wants from me, what more he wants from me, what he wants me to do moving forward. And she said, try this. Go to a room here, sit in a chair, make sure there's a chair across from you. Close your eyes for 10 minutes and just be still. Just be quiet. And use your imagination. Because one of the other things she taught me over the 3 years was God comes to us in so many different ways of all of our senses. And she said, use your imagination and picture God sitting in that chair opposite you. And when you open your eyes, you should see him sitting there. Well, I can be skeptical, cynical from time to time. I wasn't quite sure about this, but I figured, man, this sounds like good stuff. So I did just that. Sat in that chair. I don't know, I didn't sit there looking at my watch, but I figured it was a good amount of time, just picturing in my mind's eye God sitting across from me. When I opened my eyes, I saw him sitting there, looking at me with a smile on his face. And I almost didn't know what to do. I almost didn't know what to say. But I said just what that old gentleman said in what he did in his room. I just talked with God. I had a conversation with him, and he had a conversation back with me. It was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in being alone with God. So I'm offering that to all of you. You don't have to do it tonight. You don't have to do it tomorrow. When you have a moment when you're feeling alone. Pope Benedict was quoted as saying one time, I felt lonely many times throughout my life, but I've never felt alone. When you find yourself experiencing that, try this spiritual exercise and sit there, be quiet, picture God in your mind's eye. And when you open your eyes, my gift to you is seeing God sit in front of you. Know that he is there. Know that he is always there. He never leaves us alone. In all of our journeys, in all of our spiritual travels, our faith travels, even when we feel abandoned, even when we feel away from the church or away from family or away from anyone else, always know this. God never abandons us, and God is always with us. Use that the next time you feel that loneliness in your life.